I'm really honored and delighted to be here with you all to take you through a journey of creative movement. As the word suggests, it's not about learning a dance form or a style, but the idea is to create your own movement language to express yourself. It's a bit like going to an art class. The teacher gives you colored crayons and says, draw what you feel like. And you might scribble, you might doodle, or you might make an image, and that's your art. In the same manner, I offer movement experiences to people so that they can create their own personal movement language to express themselves. Let me tell you about the first time that I went to a dance class in the US. The teacher told us, move freely, move in silence, and move the way you feel like. And I froze. I had no idea what she was talking about. But yet, when I looked around and I saw that all the dancers were moving in complete abandon. And so I too decided to take a few steps and tried out different kinds of movements. And I too began to do this spontaneous dance. And slowly, I began to get connected to myself in a deeper way, to my body, to the space around me, and to the dancers around me. It felt as though a lot of movement that was trapped in my body suddenly emerged and exploded out into space. And for the first time, I felt that dance could be a really cathartic experience where a lot of stuff that's buried in a body just comes out. So it's not always about learning a dance form or a style and perfecting it. Since then, I have always learned from my teachers that the body is an important part of our personality. And the movement language that emerges is an important part of this body language. And the body expresses who I am, the way I sit, stand, walk, talk, etc. And this movement language is spoken throughout our lives. Outside of these dance classes, I would observe myself, the way I use gestures to make a point, or the way my body attitude shifted, indicating what I thought or what I felt, and the way my facial expressions would change according to what I heard or how I was trying to react. And I slowly understood something that I had heard many times before, that 75% of our communication with the outside world happens through this amazing body language of ours. Our bodies can think, speak, memorize, express, and communicate our thoughts and feelings. And much later, when I came back to India, I began working with people using my movement practice. I realized another thing, that though India has thousands and thousands of dance forms and styles, yet most people are scared of the word dance. Rekha, for example, she would come into my dance class and she would tell me, ma'am, can I just observe this class? Because when I dance, I feel like a puppet gone wrong. Or when I dance, I feel like I have two left feet. And yet with gentle persuasion from all of us, she began to dance. She moved different parts of her body with ease. She began to use space. She ran, she jumped, she creeped, she crawled. She did all kinds of movements that she'd never done before. And all these movements sat so naturally on her bodies. And this for me was the magic of dance. And much later, I would think about how could someone like this, who was so reluctant to move, suddenly break into these beautiful dances? And the answer, my friends, is really simple. movement is the medium that all of us live in. Movement is primal to us, and movement is something that we were born with. That's what we did in our mother's womb, right? We kicked, we somersaulted, we felt the womb space through our bodies, and then we came out. We were babies. We were still expressing ourselves through movement, our desires, our needs, and then we became children. And we were still expressing through movement. We played games, we danced, and we really didn't care how we looked. And much later, we were adults, and the movement language in our bodies shrunk. Our movement language became limited because society told us how to behave with our bodies. And if you look around these days, our movement capabilities have got reduced to our fingertips, thanks to our smartphones. So, what Rita had done in those few hours of dancing was she had reclaimed her body through movement. And this movement, I would like to call it the universal mother tongue, because all of us can speak it here. People across different personality types, people with different kinds of body types, people across different age groups. I have worked with people across socio-cultural divides, across linguistic zones, across urban-rural divides, and everyone has moved in whatever shape or whatever form. And movement can also be used therapeutically with people who have physical, emotional, and mental challenges or disabilities. This brings back a memory for me of my brother, who was wheelchair bound almost all his life because most of his body was paralyzed, and he had something called cerebral palsy, which meant also that the movement in his body was diminishing. But when he heard music, he would really get animated and energized, and he would do all kinds of movements like jumping out of his wheelchair or sliding down his wheelchair or trying to twist his body from side to side or, nodding his head to that piece of music or reaching out with his hands. And he would look so happy and proud of himself. It felt like his self-esteem went up. And for those few moments, it felt like he was not at all frustrated about being trapped on his wheelchair. So Pawan's case is one among thousands of people who have benefited through movement, who feel enthusiastic, who feel motivated about life. Take me, for example. If it was not for dance and movement, I would have perhaps moved in a boringly functional manner, just doing my daily chores, in a very mechanical manner, ad nauseum. But because of dance, I feel that I'm able to connect better with people through my body language, and I feel so good. I feel like a new person when I dance. I feel like all these feelings of sadness and, depression and stuff like that you don't want inside you get released through movement. And so, a daily dose of dance puts me in a happy mood. And there's a scientific reason for this. When we dance and when we move, the brain releases a mood-lifting neurotransmitter called serotonin, among many others. And when we physically move in a creative way, we also release endorphins, which are brain chemicals that promote euphoric feelings, that promote a sense of well-being and positivity. And what I learned through this experience was dance and movement can be natural antidepressants. Take Archana, for example. She was a completely depressed person, and her anxiety was getting too much for her. and she was getting completely stressed out with the kind of life she led. And someone told her that when you dance, you're going to get rid of all these feelings. And yet, she did not know where to begin. So she came to me, and we worked through 3 developmental stages. In the first stage, I seeded movement into her body, and she learned to get familiar with the movement vocabulary in her body. She learned to understand her strengths and weaknesses in relation to her body language. And in the second stage, she did something called movement exploration, where she had fun with movement, where she took pleasure in the very act of moving. She tried a lot of different varieties of movement. She made body statues, and she moved in different levels of space, high, mid and low. She moved in different directions of space, front, back, sides, angles, etc. She made body rhythms, yeah? And then she also took very long breaths along with her movement. And after going through this variety of movement patterns, then she got into something called movement expression, in which she expressed everything that she was going through. It was almost like her body was filled with all kinds of emotions, toxic feelings that were hurting her, and it felt like a lot of sadness that was buried in the musculature of the body finally came out. And much later she shared that movement had actually helped her become a much happier person. She was able to connect back to her old friends that she'd lost touch with. She was able to feel good about herself. She laughed a lot more, and she never looked back on her depression again. So one thing that she said that was really wonderful was, for her, movement acted as a stress buster that melted away her anxious thoughts each day. Just recently, I worked with a group of corporate professionals, and we did a lot of fun things with movement. We warmed up the body. We also played a lot of group games and activities using movement. And we also cooled down the body with a relaxation routine. And at the end of it, when we all sat in a circle and everyone had to reflect what they experienced and what came up for them through this whole movement experience, many of them said that, look, before the session we felt we were all obsessed and we are complete slaves to this whole virtual digital world of mobiles and laptops. And somehow dance has brought us to the here and now. We feel a great sense of self-awareness. We're able to connect with each other in the group, and you could actually feel this interpersonal bonding that happened between the group members. And most importantly, many of them said that we feel a thirst for real life and real relationships. And one person, Jaiveer, shared that for him, he was so relieved to have escaped from this digital trap that he was constantly in. And he felt human, he felt alive, to just be able to move with his body. So you see, in a way I felt this was such a powerful experience, and it felt like dance could be another form of digital detox that in fact all of us need sorely to carry on with our meaningful lives. So friends, you all heard me, and you must be wondering, how can I integrate movement into my own life? Very simple. For 21 days, put on music for 20 minutes a day and move to that music the way you feel like. And on the 22nd day, your body will crave for movement. It will demand movement from you. And you will feel the positive effects of movement on your body, your mind, and your soul. So do move, do express, do transform. Thank you very much for having me here.